Okay, everybody. Nick with Honeit. Today on the Honeit Podcast, we have Vira Trevino-Garcia. Vira, so great to have you here. We've enjoyed working with you. I think today we want to kind of open it up. We want to talk a little bit about your expertise in executive search. I know you've got a great background starting from kind of Robert Half and then doing consultative work at various companies and now kind of voyaging into new industries and helping new clients, find great talent. So everybody, Vira, maybe you could introduce yourself and kind of start with how did you fall into this profession that we call recruitment?
Sure. Well, thank you, Nick, and thank you so much for having me. So yes, like Nick said, I have been in recruiting. Actually, I think this is year 23 for me. So I was with Robert Half back when we used to fax resumes to clients. I started my degree is in accounting, and I actually got into recruiting like most recruiters by accident. I went to Robert Half to be placed in an accounting position, and went out for an interview with their client. And then when they brought me back in, they said, our client loved you, but we really want you to consider doing recruiting instead. I'd never, having come from a very small town in South Texas, never knew about recruiting or kind of never even considered it as a profession. But as I thought about it over the weekend, I thought, what can I lose? There'll always be accounting jobs if I decide to go back. And to this day, I know their manager at the time told me, if you ever start seeing accounting and finance job descriptions that sound like a great time to you, then it's time to go back to recruiting. And 23 years later, I have not seen it. So I still get a little bit of a knot in my stomach every time I talk to a client that says I'm in the middle of month end or a system conversion or something like that I went through. So I did spend 7 or 8 years in accounting before I came into recruiting, and have not looked back. Love it. I absolutely love what I do, but I've been able to leverage.
So that must have really helped then, just even talking to accounting and finance candidates. Did that give you kind of an edge where you could sift through the BS or just be able to assess someone a little bit better on those phone screens because you'd done it, you'd been in the trenches, you know what that role is and does? How did that set you apart?
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so I did spend the last 20-ish years on doing mainly accounting and finance recruiting and executive search. And most definitely my knowledge in accounting and finance helped me to be able to do much deeper dives, much more technical screens, and really gain credibility with the candidates and with the clients alike. And then most recently, in the last year and a half or so, I've moved and started helping some clients on the corporate side. And so doing a little bit more corporate, which has been eye-opening. And after 20 years, I'm learning again. So that's great.
That's fun. So yeah, being an external recruiter at Robert Half, and then I noticed you went in-house with VCFO, which I thought was fascinating. And you were finding accounting, finance, even HR talent for clients in kind of a consultative capacity. Right. Was that right?
That's right. Yeah.
What was that? I always think it's fun kind of recruiting recruiters. Did you ever help place TA folks and HR folks?
I did. So my role at VCFO was a little different because I helped to recruit for the internal talent. So those were the CFOs, controllers, and senior level HR professionals that did fractional work for VCFO's clients. Unique model because you're asking someone to come into a variable hours environment. And so it was, we had to really, really put our thinking hats on how to sell it. We had to do a lot of recruitment marketing, really focus on employer branding. We had a great, they're based in Austin and have a really strong brand in the market as a service provider, but really hadn't focused on doing their employer branding. And so we put a lot of thought into that and made a lot of progress. We looked at, this was, I was also there during the height of when kind of DE&I came to the forefront. And so we put a lot of thought into what our recruiting process looks like. We touched on our job descriptions. Were they gender biased? Our interview process, VCFO was heavily female. And so we realized that a lot of times candidates only saw a female from the time they spoke with me all the way till they spoke with the CEO, who's also female. And so we really kind of picked apart what we were doing and looked at it from a perspective of what does this candidate touch look like. We really focused on doing kind of a white glove approach to how we handled the candidates and built great relationships with them. For VCFO, there's kind of the added benefit that a lot of those CFOs that we talked with would then become, if we didn't hire them at VCFO, a lot of times they went and took a CFO job somewhere else, and then they became clients of VCFO.
There you go.
So as long as they had a great experience, yeah. As long as they had a great experience with us, we did our job well. So, yeah.
Using candidate experience as a competitive advantage. I mean, I think, just like customer experience, that can set you apart and lead to new business development, to your point. That's fantastic. So Absolutely. Were you getting, because you built that brand, were you getting inbound applicants as well as, or was it still external sourcing and things like that?
Well, the CFO accounting in general is still a very tight market even today. And so we did still do a lot of outbound sourcing, a lot of relationship building. We focused on building talent pools. And so keeping in touch with, with CFOs, with controllers, maybe CFOs within a certain industry, maybe consumer product CFOs or different, and then just keeping in touch with them. And so we did our outbound in that regard. We were able to lower the amount of cold call outbounds that we did by building those relationships. And our goal all along was to become a destination employer where they came to us. That's ideal, obviously. So we just kept that as our goal and worked towards that.
Fantastic. In terms of executive search, because you mentioned you've seen the industry evolve from, faxing resumes and file cabinets to online resumes and job boards to now, social recruiting and LinkedIn profiles and next gen kind of now we're into this kind of world of AI and automation. Where are we at with executive search? I mean, and I know recruitment in general is going through a bit of a shift, but what are you seeing at the kind of the executive level of the current market, right? Our industry is at a bit of a shakeup right now. It's mid 2023. There's a lot of recruiters out of work. Is that happening at the executive search level, or are internal TAs teams still keeping internal executive search folks, or is there still executive and retained searches happening? Kind of what's your thoughts on the state of executive recruitment at the moment?
It's really interesting because, from a search perspective, most of the time when I do searches, and particularly when they're accounting and finance focused, but when I do searches, it is much easier for me to find a CFO or VP of finance than it is a 5 to 7 year accountant. That's where the gap really is. It takes 3 or 4 times the effort to find a 5 to 7 year accountant than it does a CFO. So I think there's not the talent shortage at the executive level that there is in terms of sheer numbers. I think the numbers are out there as far as talent availability. I think where the challenge comes in at the executive search is fit, because obviously the further up the ladder you go, the more important that becomes, right? So it's finding the right executive that makes a difference. And I think that, a lot of the shift where the pendulum has come over to the candidate side of it, some of those things have not, you haven't seen the wage increases proportionately at the executive level as, in percentage increase as you have at the okay. Individual contributor level. I think one of the big things in recruiting has been the work from home, the remote. And that's the first question on so many positions when you reach out to a candidate, is this a remote role, right? And that's really just not the case the majority of the time in the executive search. It's much less in executive search than it is in the individual contributor level.
So they're not asking; they're kind of assuming they're going to be in the office. It's less of a possibility, so it's not even a topic. Right. Okay, interesting.
Right. And some of that may be scope specific. You need to, if you're a CEO, you probably need to be on site if you've got employees that are on site. And some of it may be generational. I think some of you definitely target each generation differently because they value different things. And so I think a lot of the CEOs or the executives maybe are in or members of the generation that you go to work. That's what you do.
They can't imagine this new world of logging in from home and walking the dog in between me. So yeah, it is interesting. You're right. So as recruiters, like it's our job to kind of, I like to talk about recruiters get our insights not from like a resume or a job description in most cases. It's typically from like the intake call where we're learning what's not on the job description, what a hiring manager typically wants. That conversation is full of information, just like we're talking to candidates about not what they necessarily did, but what they want to be doing, what's next. And then we use those human insights that we uncover to play matchmaker. And I think you bring up a great point. It's not just the experience of the CFO or VP of finance that we need to check the boxes, but it's that fit. How do you, are you a good people reader? Are you a psychic? How do you start to kind of match if this person could be a great fit in this gap in this organization? Like what are you looking for? What are you listening for? And I think when we talk about communication as recruiters, that's a big thing. So I'm just curious to get your thoughts on how can we pick it apart, or what are you listening for on your conversations?
Yeah, there's some really interesting developments in that area. I think from a very basic level, the more you listen to the hiring side of it, right? So whether it be my client or it be an internal hiring manager, the more you listen to them and really, really dig deep into what they're looking for, not just what's on the HR job description, but tell me what else I don't see on this job description. What else do I need to know? Why didn't the last person work? Ideally, if you could have everything you're looking for and something else, what is that something else? So really digging deep into that so that you begin to identify. And the more you work with them, the more you learn, you learn their communication style, and you learn to hear what they're actually saying when they say things. So I think that from a base perspective, that really makes a big difference. Where that has begun to really change in a positive way is with the implementation of AI, because AI has started to take away some of the manual things that a recruiter would do. A lot of there are AI tools out there that will screen candidates for you, screen out the candidates. And so you have a ripe pool to work with that takes away a big piece of it, because manually looking through applicants or through resumes is a big chunk of a recruiter's time. And so if you can get assistance there, then your time is elevated in value, in that you can really spend the time with that candidate. You spend much more time with them. I've often said, I'm a little, you have to be a little bit like a counselor, because you listen to what motivates them. Yep. You listen to what they're really looking for. You listen to what the hiring manager wants, and then you kind of just massage them together. But I think the key skill is listening. The key skill is communicating. Honeit is, in my experience using Honeit, has become so valuable in that, because especially when you are recruiting across disciplines, right? I can do really, really well in accounting and finance and take super technical notes because I've been doing that for over 20 years. But when I'm now recruiting for a rocket scientist and I really don't know much about rocket science, it makes it much more difficult for me to capture everything they say. If I'm manually trying to take notes, I might miss something. I might miss something critical. I might not capture something correctly, and that could make a big difference. If I capture it incorrectly, it could mean the difference between them wanting to move forward with them or not. And so Honeit capturing and then utilizing the AI tool to create the summary, which has been incredibly accurate, has really elevated that communication, because now I'm speaking the hiring manager's language when I'm able to submit that summary that's accurate and means something to the the hiring manager doesn't want me to just reiterate what's on the resume, right? They want to know the rest of the story, and you can't always capture it all. And so I think communication has been is a big thing, and AI is really. I know a lot of recruiters said, "Oh gosh, we're gonna lose our jobs," if AI comes in, and I see it differently. I really think that what AI is doing is taking away the manual parts of it and allowing us to really, really elevate our value. Really spend that time one-on-one with the candidate. If AI is taking care of the more manual pieces, then we've got more time to spend in valuable time to spend with the candidate. So it was kind of all over the board with that one, but
no, I hope
that answered your question.
You covered so many things. I mean, it's the nuances, and it's I like to joke, you take a look at all these different separate conversations in the hiring process, yet it's a team sport. And so what used to just be a hiring manager and a candidate talking and then deciding, do we hire this person? Well, now you've got 14 people involved with the hiring process. And it starts with, to your point, clear communication from the very beginning, the intake call and alignments. And does the recruiter and the sourcer and the external recruiter and the external sourcer and the interview teams and the executive stakeholder, is everybody aligned with what the hiring manager is looking for? I mean, that's kind of where it starts, to be able to assess people from the same framework or mindset of what we're looking for. And then it's, as you hear things that are interesting, you're right. If you interpret something a little differently as a recruiter who's not a expert interviewing rocket scientists, which who would be, right? But like if we miss something or misinterpret something, you're right. That could either sever next step, or we miss a diamond in the rough, right? Or we're wasting hiring managers' time with the wrong folks, right?
Exactly.
And so all of that stuff matters. So you had mentioned, the inputs and the outputs also of our conversations would be, what questions are we asking these rocket scientists? And then the output becomes kind of the AI summarization or the actual answers that someone gives you. I also think that's very interesting now to start to look at actually the inputs and the outputs of a human conversation, right?
Yeah, and the cheat sheet for that for me has been the call guide generator on Honeit, because I've got this job description of a rocket scientist, and I'm still not 100% sure what I need to ask a rocket scientist, but the call guide generator on Honeit comes up, and you obviously know you can specify how much of it you want to be cultural, how much of it you want to be technical, that as far as the questions, but it has produced questions for the candidates that are deeply meaningful and make a difference. And then again, you ask this technical question that's produced by Honeit, and thank goodness Honeit is capturing it, because they go deep into their technical discussions, and you can't be an expert of everything, and I think this is why sometimes in the past, it was so beneficial to have recruiters that were specific. You had ad agency recruiters or sales recruiters, or because they were specific, or accounting and finance recruiters, and you could really dig deep, and the Honeit tool really kind of allows you to float across disciplines and still be able to have a technical conversation, still be able to ask technical questions, capture technical answers, and produce a technical summary for the hiring manager that is meaningful and accurate. And that's I think that's invaluable to a recruiter, because now you've become a utility player, right? It's not just, hey, we'll go to Vita for all our accounting and finance positions. She actually can talk to a scientist or to to, whoever, and still produce a quality product for us. And that's huge value for a recruiter.
That is so exciting to hear you say it here. I mean, I think it also kind of frees up the recruiter to get back to enjoying what we do, right? Like if because with that specialization comes monotony, right? Like there's another controller search or another cost accountant search, right? And that just but if you can, even marketing jobs, we talk to recruiters, even if you are a marketing recruiter today, there might be like 70 different specializations in marketing, right? From web analytics to paid search to social and so even to your point, even if you were labeled an accounting and finance recruiter, there's such a breadth of types of roles nowadays with how big, complicated finance organizations have become, right? It still could be challenging even within a discipline to be that
absolutely
expert and asking those key questions for the wide variety of roles. So I love that. Maybe we could talk a little bit about well, I guess what would you like to talk about? I've been asking the questions. What are your thoughts on just kind of the state of recruiting, right? We're finding a lot of recruiters out of work. It's not really making sense with what we're hearing from the jobs reports. We touched this a little bit on the beginning of the call, but I don't know what's happening there. One theory I had was that as companies start to think about their policy of, okay, are we in the office? Are we hybrid or are we remote? If we're going to be on-site or hybrid, maybe we can now hire someone from any of our physical offices. And so when we have one job, we might advertise it in our 17 U.S. offices, which is 17 job posts, which might inflate the number of job ads out there, but it really still might just be the one job. I don't know if that might be happening as people, because if you don't want to just do hybrid or a remote and say, okay, one job posting, check the box on LinkedIn that make it remote, that's pretty straightforward. But LinkedIn hasn't made it very easy to say, here's the job and we'll accept candidates in these 15 locations, right? There's no feature for that. And so
you have to specify each location.
With the ATS is a nightmare. So I'm just curious to get your thoughts on what do we think is happening, and maybe what do we think is going to happen once the dust settles and companies figure out their policies. And
I think COVID and AI kind of coming in back to back are going to, and when we look back at this time, at these 3 years or whatever, we're going to realize that it was disruptive to recruiting. It was in a good way. I think that COVID, sent everybody to work from home. And while, some companies are going back to the office. Some of them have found a way to make it work and actually find, I live in Houston and it takes an hour and a half to get from Houston to Houston. And so if you, if I commute each day I've wasted 3 hours of my time that I absolutely work more hours at home than if I went into the office. Now that doesn't work for every position, but I think that the other benefit of the remote work is a couple of other benefits. It opens up a bigger talent pool, right? Because if you're looking for, cheese processor in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, or whatever, you are limited to the talent pool there, and where you open up the geography on that, you've opened up the talent pool equally, and you've opened up the compensation, because New York City is you might find someone who can do the same job remotely from Texas for less than having to hire someone in New York City. So you're really opening up the talent pools with having that remote ability and really staying open to that remote in positions that it makes sense. Now, it doesn't always, but and then the other thing that's done is for the DE&I front. obviously geography, has its own demographics. And, if you need your demographics to be wider and opened up, and you're able to do remote, it does that for you automatically, because now all of a sudden you've got, everyone to choose from, and you may find that skill. It makes it easier to really bring to the table all of the different perspectives, all of the different economic status people, all of the different genders, all the different, everything along the spectrum of DE&I. So when that remote option is out there, I think there's some very positive things to it, aside from just you save, real estate space. Yeah. But the basic ones obviously are out there. I think in terms of recruiting the industry, it is interesting because the layoffs have been disproportionate to the jobs numbers. The job numbers, when you look at the jobs numbers, which unemployment went up a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but nothing, it still is nowhere near matched to what we're seeing in the layoffs of talent acquisition. And so what I think is happening is that recruiters are, I know, because I've felt this, recruiters are, companies are still hiring, and recruiters are being asked to do more. There's no doubt about it. And so now you can, run to the corner and cry about it, right? Or you can find a way to make yourself, you utilize your tech stack, you really look at your workflow processes, and you make yourself the most effective, most efficient recruiter you can, because that's how recruiters can get done more with less, is just to really intelligently automate their workflow where they can, and take away the manual pieces of it. And the technology's out there to do it. And so it doesn't make sense to say, let's keep this giant recruiting team and continue to do things manually, when the technology is out there to be able to be more effective and be more efficient, and just really utilize your tech stack to be, as efficient and effective as you can be. So I think that it's, well said. I think it's definitely changing. There's a lot of recruiters that are out of work, unfortunately. I think it'll all kind of even itself back out again. But I think that technology is going to be a bigger piece of it. The video interviewing, any recruiter will tell you, but pre-COVID, we pushed for video interviewing. We encouraged
the one-way stuff. Yeah, the one-way stuff. But that way, I think people have come full circle realizing that maybe that wasn't the best candidate experience, right? Like sending an extended application or homework or so it's funny, the term video interviewing, it has this kind of negative sentiment, right? Because
absolutely,
most folks
that wasn't but even when you look at like a Zoom interview, pre-COVID, hiring managers just weren't open to it. I need to be able to look them in the eye. I have to be able to shake their hand. I can't hire a candidate over video. I can't talk to them over video and know whether I like them or not. COVID came along and kind of forced that. And while some of them, have gone back to the 100% traditional in person, a lot more of them have bought into the video interview and will do hiring 100% by video, and so it really moved the needle for us in recruiting, because all along recruiters were saying we can get this process shortened if I don't have to look at flights and hotel and their calendar and your calendar and all of that stuff. Why don't you take 30 minutes to talk to them by phone and let's see if this is a good fit or not, or by video, and where they weren't open to it before. I think they've really opened their minds about it, and were forced to, unfortunately, and a lot of them like it. That's
fairly recent, to your point. I mean, that shift only just happened a couple of years ago in many kind of bigger and more traditional companies. I think what we're starting to see and what we get excited about at Honeit is that now that people have shifted to these kind of, keeping the human in HR, these human conversations that are happening, not the one-way stuff, but the human conversations, when we start to think of those conversations as data, Vira can interview a rocket scientist ask rocket scientist questions on the very first call,
Right.
hang up the phone and share rocket scientist answers with a few other rocket scientists who can quickly hear and know a good answer when they hear it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This idea of interview data we're finding, and we call that kind of data. It's the data from the call. It's what the person said. That's data.
Mm-hmm.
If recruiters now can share data with other stakeholders and those people can assess and understand good versus great, we start to get to this idea that's exciting around interview collaboration, right? Which I think is going to be this next wave of, do we still need 7 separate conversations with 7 separate people to ask the same 7 questions and hear the same 7 answers? Or can we front load it with a great recruiter who can now facilitate a couple core value questions, technical questions, industry questions on one conversation, share those insights instantly with the various stakeholders, and turn that 8-step process into a 3-step interview process, perhaps, right? But still have 8 people involved in assessing and hearing answers and providing feedback and contributing, but just it may not take 8 weeks to get someone through that 8-step process. So that's kind of where we get excited. This shift from on-site shake your hand to now virtual conversations via telephone, VoIP call globally, video call globally. Now that it's data as the output, this idea of interview collaboration is now possible. So that's
absolutely. And as a hiring team, that's critical, because I don't know the percentage, but I can tell you it's high, of the number of candidates that are lost in the process is because of timing. You know, if your timing is too long, if you're slow in your process, you're going to lose candidates. The best candidates, won't be on the market for very long. The person with the most efficient process is the team with the most efficient process is usually the team that has first pick of the best candidates out there. And so you have to be able to use that data and shorten that process and make yourself very competitive from a timing perspective in order to gain the top talent.
Are you finding that after your conversations, when you do share those insights and summaries and the data from your call with the hiring team, are you finding they get back to you quicker than they used to?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
Because that's always that was always kind of the waiting period. And that's where the ghosting happens with recruiters and candidates. It's not that the recruiters don't want to provide feedback. Many times we're just kind of waiting to hear back from everybody else. And there's just that waiting game. But if we can bridge that. Hey, I just spoke with someone great. Right. What do you think? Amazing. Boom. Next steps.
Well, and you think of it, you put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes, right? And they've got, this is just a piece of what they do all day long, right? They've got their real job to do all day. And so finding time to sit down where you can actually focus on what you're reading and read 2 or 3 pages worth of notes versus clicking and listening. I mean, it not only is it more convenient, they're more excited about it. They know that they can get to a decision pretty quickly just by listening versus, reading these 3 pages of notes that are going to be sprinkled with a recruiter's take on it. Because when I manually write notes about a candidate, they're going to all start to sound the same. The candidates, there's going to be nuances, but my style of interpretation of what they're saying and my style of presentation is so similar that it's harder for the hiring managers to really distinguish which one of these they like best. Now, when they're listening to the candidate or seeing them on video, it's a game changer, because they know with much more certainty whether they're interested in that candidate or not, whether this is the right fit or not. They're absolutely, and my bias that I may have thrown into it with my style is taken out of it completely.
I love that from a DEI. I mean, from a DEI perspective, we spent a lot of time thinking about that. We recently added a bias button. I don't know if you've ever
I saw that
used that, but it's the idea. It's it's not about what someone looks like, or even where they went to school, or maybe even where they worked previously. In many cases, it's kind of what do they know about a specific thing? How deep can they speak about it? How knowledgeable are they about the industry or the domain? And so it's like, if we can hide the name and the photo and the resume, even in certain situations, and just say, hey, listen to this. Right. I fundamentally think we can level the playing field in many cases and give high potential candidates a shot, give people whose resume may not be a 10 out of 10 a shot, because we know it when we hear it as recruiters, but then getting the buy-in on that next step and saying, no, trust me, they're amazing.
Right.
That's
absolutely.
Bit of a
absolutely. One of my hiring manager clients, when I referred to this specifically, said, "Oh, it's like The Voice," and it kind of is, because you don't look at them, you don't look at their name, you don't make any you don't form any biases based on the things that would have. And if you don't think, there's some free tools out there that you can go out and take. I forgot if it was MIT or who has it. Someone has a tool out there for you to test your own biases. And I'll tell you, I thought I didn't have any biases, right? But I do. When you take it, you absolutely do. Everyone does. It's wow. Human. And so when you take that piece out of it, and they are really able to focus on the skill and their communication of it and their ability to talk in depth about it, about how well they can actually do the job, it really does level the playing field. Most definitely. I think, again, game changer for DE&I.
Vira, it's been so fun to chat with you. We could keep riffing on this for another 40 minutes, I think. But you got a lot of recs on your plate, and you want to get back. But this has been fantastic. I think you've dropped a lot of knowledge. I think recruiting has a real opportunity today, even with the kind of the scary time that we're in and kind of the reorganizing. But I think you're right. I think it's going to be tools and technology that help that recruiter who's burned out and too many recs, like, find a way to do what we do. And I think it's going to be a good blend of automating the manual stuff, as you said, like, get that off our plates, right? So that we can still keep the process human and focus on our conversations with people. But again, automate the tedious stuff to keep, take the pressure off, right. Restore some of that, recruiter experiences. We talk a lot about recruiter experience. And I think if we can fix recruiter experience, we're actually going to be solving some of the candidate experience issues we've seen over the last 20 years, as well as the hiring experience, right? Yeah. And new opportunities to potentially streamline that, simplify it, cut down steps.
Yeah. And provide more opportunity for diverse candidates too, along with all of that. So I think it's a again, I've been doing it for 23 years and seen every market you can think of, from 9/11 to the recession in 09, 10, 11, whatever it was, all of those things. And I can honestly say I've never been as excited about the future of recruiting as I am right now, because I really think that the things that are coming into play today, they're going to make recruiting a whole new ballgame. And you really are it's an opportunity to really become a great recruiter, given the tools that are out there now. I can't say I'm a good recruiter because I've been doing it for 20 years. The only way I'm going to be a good recruiter is if I can take what's out there now and really make myself good at it in that with those tools. Because it is a whole new game out there coming up, and it's exciting. It's a chance for us to really be better at what we do. It's a chance for us to really impact the quality of hire, the time to hire, all of those things that can make significant differences for the business. So it is an exciting time, and I think it'll. As far as the negative parts of what's happening in the job market, as my mama always said, this too shall pass, and we'll come out better on the other side of it. I'm convinced of that, for sure. With the things that are out there and on the forefront for us, it's going to be a really exciting time, most definitely.
So inspiring. Thank you, Vira.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it. Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Nick. Bye-bye.